Welcome to Fintech Daydreaming, the podcast that dives into the world of banking technologies and the ever-changing landscape of fintech companies. We bring you real-life examples from global and local thought leaders, as well as experts working within the financial industry, and seek out the best stories from the front lines of financial services innovation, where dreams of industry pioneers meet reality. Hosted by Krogdahl and Ville Sointu, this is Fintech Daydreaming.
Hello, welcome and thank you for joining us for another episode of Fintech Daydreaming. My name is Ville Sointu and it looks like it's my turn to take the wheel for this fast-paced episode ahead of us. I won't be alone, of course, as I'm as always joined in the virtual studio by my trusted co-host Paul Krogdahl. So, hi Paul, I guess we should stop seeing each other this way. What do you think?
I agree, although, I'm actually missing the ability for us to get together, have a beer and a good chat. I can understand the whole social distancing and I can understand what's happening with Corona and the ongoing pandemic problems we've got. But sometimes I do miss us being able to sit together for these podcast episodes, yeah. Right? I think the last time we did that was over Christmas, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I do like to think that maybe we're kind of closer to the end of this than we are to the beginning, but we can always hope for the best and fear for the worst, I guess.
Yes.
So speaking of fearing for the worst, do you have a joke for us, Paul?
I do have a joke, yes. And this time I'm particularly proud of our joke. It is a typical bad but good joke, but I'm proud because this was actually a joke that came to me from my daughter. Out of sheer enjoyment, she came and said, Dad, I've got a banking joke for your podcast. So with my hand on my heart and proudness, I have to say, Ville, why did the duck go to the bank?
I don't know. I guess you're going to tell me.
Because he needed a new bill.
Oh, okay. I kind of like that. I can accept that.
I think for a 10-year-old who had done research and gone out and Googled banking jokes for her beloved father, I think that joke should go on the top of the best bad jokes of the Fintech Daydreaming podcast history.
Hall of Fame material for sure. I guess it's something we should do. We should do like a Hall of Fame kind of vote for all the jokes that we've had so far. Maybe put it on LinkedIn or something. Let's see how it goes.
We could try that. I mean, we've already got the YouTube Hall of Fame, which we've started doing now. That will come out each month, showing the top 3 most popular episodes on YouTube. Right? Yeah. So. Why not?
Go. Let's continue with that kind of theme then. Let's see how we make it and when we make it. But on with the show and our guest for this episode, which of course is the most important thing for all of us listening to this episode right now. So today we're going to talk about one of the fintech megatrends, which is nothing more or less than financial inclusion, or more accurately today, especially financial literacy and education. To kind of look at the broad perspective of things to kind of get the kind of how big this actually is, financial inclusion is positioned prominently as an enabler and a target for 8 of the 17 United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So United Nations sees financial inclusion as a critical component for the sustainable future for 2030. Now, while of course UN types of goals of sustainable development in this context are often linked to things like emerging markets and especially an effort to bring digital financial services to the underserved parts of the population, here in the Nordics, financial exclusion and digital exclusion and financial illiteracy are also critical development areas, perhaps from a little bit of a different basis and in a different ways, but these are of course very critical issues. And And here they actually take a bit of a different form. So in the modern digital and global economy, the amount of options and quite simply access to different products and instruments is quite overwhelming. And now already at an early age, you get exposed into digital payments. You don't really see cash that much anymore. And you kind of easily lose control and understanding of finance basics unless you take an active stance to actually try to learn it. Now, too many people still either knowingly or due to lack of access to proper resources end up ignoring financial skills entirely. And according to research, this has a direct impact to their lifetime wealth and well-being. This is literally a matter of life and death. Not to sound too dramatic, but that's actually what it is. Now, luckily, we have someone with us today who is in the front line of this important work of improving financial literacy. And our guest today is Philip Haglund. He is the founder and CEO of Gimme. Now, before starting in fintech, though, Philip was a professional soccer player seen in the Swedish teams IFK Göteborg and Hammarby IF, as well as in the Dutch team, and I'm going to butcher this name, SC Heerenveen. Okay, close enough. He also has a master's degree in economics from Stockholm School of Economics and started Gimme, the fintech we're going to talk about today, in 2015. Back then, Philip saw a growing problem with children being excluded from the financial landscape as societies turned more and more cashless. Today, his Fin and EdTech company is used by children and families all over the world and named the most promising fintech company in the Nordics and Baltics by MasterCard. Now, welcome to the show, Philip. How are you doing today?
Thanks a lot. I'm great. I'm actually out of Sweden for a week now. So yeah, I'm also, doing all my work through Zoom and different kind of hangouts and so. So working a lot remotely, but I'm great. It's not that good weather today. Now I'm actually like somewhere in a cave in a basement here. But anyway, I got connection, so that's pretty good.
Pretty good, pretty good. The sun is actually shining here in Helsinki region, so maybe we're a little bit more lucky on that front today, perhaps. Usually it doesn't happen though. I mean, I lived in Stockholm for a couple of years. I always remember sun was always shining in Stockholm, but never in Helsinki. Maybe one day is a different then. But again, you have a fantastically interesting background from professional sports to fintech. Could you share a little bit more about your journey and how on earth did you land in this nerdy fintech space?
Yeah, I mean, I started playing football when I was like 6-7 years old. It's been what I've been doing in my life. It's, when I started, that was what I was good at. And I had a talent, but I guess I wasn't the one, who could do a lot of dribbling, who were doing like cool stunts. And so I was just like working hard. But when I was like 17, 18, I wasn't also the one who maybe were lifted up to the A team. So I found out that, okay, maybe I need to, put some work into the studies and just make sure I got some good grades. And it was actually when I was studying at school, Stockholm School of Economics, that football actually went better for me. But I've been back and forth, with doing studies and now also for the past years working with Gimme and playing soccer. It's been a lot of planning, just making sure I can get, through the day. But I would say, in general, for me, I've been always working to become as good as I can in football. I think everyone who's into sports are quite goal focused and quite ambitious in that sense. And for me, actually, with my career in football, I think why I actually had to stop was mostly due to my body, because you get these injuries and you just can't keep on continuing as you always been doing and been playing. It's like, I know Zlatan, he's special. I mean, who can turn that that old and just continue, but he's also been changing. But for me, I think the most interesting part about going from playing football to actually working in a startup or working with your I would call it like work career is that there is no limit in terms of what your brain can do. So when my body has been limiting me, this what I feel that there's so much potential, but there are so much things in our brains, and no one limits us in terms of how far we can go. And I think that's, after playing footballs for so long, that what makes me really interested in the years to come for myself.
Yeah, great. And you then came into fintech, and I guess and again, I really want to hear how did you end up, of all the things you can do, from kind of gaming to all sorts of cool things in the technology space, you landed in fintech. But let's talk about a little bit more about Gimme, your company. So you're focusing on financial literacy for children and families, as far as I understood. But could you share a little bit more about the problems you see in this area, and how are you now looking to solve those problems?
I mean, like the basic idea of Gimme and how I came up with it was that, Sweden is such a cashless country. We're probably going to be the first cashless country in the world. It's like by 2022 or something. And so when I started looking into this idea, it was actually about children being unbanked. Like they don't have access to digital money. And I started looking into why that was, and what banks are doing in terms of digital tools and mobile banking and so forth. And I didn't find much. So it became quite clear that, okay, this is a problem maybe in terms of the children's access to digital money. But when I've been working with it, I also understood like the greater sense of it, like what's really in it for the person and for the individual in the long term. And that's when we come into the fact that children today are often financially literate, like they're not being educated in financial tools or personal finance and so forth. And really the problem is that if a child should learn about how they can use their money, and it actually goes with any like individual human being, is that we can learn in 3 different ways. And so the first one is actually getting exposure to money. We usually call it learning by doing. So everyone can relate to it. It's like if you make a mistake, you think about what you did and then you make it differently the second time. And that's the clear thing about when children are unbanked, is that they're not getting access to digital money. They're not doing their own payments. Their parents are paying for them. They don't get an allowance, like those kind of things. The second part of it is very tightly connected to theory. So it's about the knowledge, what you know about the facts or like the different kind of models. And this is something that we usually think for any subject that a child should be taught in schools. And personal finance is not part of the curriculum anywhere worldwide. So there's not one country where personal finance is actually part of the curriculum, and children are actually being taught personal finance facts and knowledge as they grow up. So for me, this is a major problem. Like when a child turns 18 or 19, some of the things we want to do in life, we can go to, a doctor if we have health problems, or we can go to an expert in tech maybe, or something if we have problems with our computer, or if we need to, repair the car or something. But when it comes to taking care of our finances, people don't have anyone to go to. If you're not part of like 0.01% of the most wealthiest people in the world, then you have like your bank person you could go to. But otherwise, you need to take care of your own money. To go into the third part of how children learn about money, or human beings in general, is that we tend to look at other people or discuss with other people how we use our money. That's called socialization. And this is actually the way most children learn about money today, is that they're looking at their parents and they see how they pay for things, how they think about their money, what they're spending the money on, how they're saving, and so forth. The problem is then that many parents are themselves financially illiterate. So the literacy level will be inherited to the next generation if the parents don't get access to tools or don't get help from other people or organizations to teach their children. So in many ways, you were talking about a little bit, but this will create an even bigger gap between an A and a B team in the society because it's being inherited. There are many surveys just showing that like 80% of parents need tools to educate their children, parents, when they think of an app, around 80% also think that the most important element of an app for the children is education. So if we would look a little bit broader on it, the whole education system is shifting right now. It's being shifted even more fast due to the pandemic. So everything we will learn, no matter if it's finances or biology or mathematics, will be taught online. And that's something that's so great and going to do so much for humanity, because it will be democratized. A person in Africa will be able to learn the same thing as a person in Europe, because we will be able to distribute the education as long as we have internet and different kind of units just to share the information through. Okay, that was a long way, a long talk, but maybe it gave some background to the problem.
Yeah. So moving into Gimme and the kind of feature space that you kind of outlined the kind of issue areas and the things that you want to develop. So what does Gimme do? I mean, I guess it gives access to underage children into having a basic type of a bank account, as far as I've understood. But I mean, what are the kind of key features of Gimme, and what are you doing that others perhaps are not doing?
So, I mean, first of all, it's quite easy to get going with Gimme. You can download Gimme from App Store, Google Play. What you're doing is that you set up an account either as a child or as a parent, and then you just connect with each other. So you create your own little family where you are handling the money. And the features that we have is, like, firstly, most parents, they set up an allowance. And it's so important to have an allowance, because that's what makes children getting access to, budgeting their week or their month and thinking about what they're spending their money on and so forth. So the allowance is fully automated in the Gimme app. So once you set it up as a parent, you don't actually have to think about it. It's kind of nice. Second thing is that the allowance, it's not just one amount that's being paid out every week or month. If you as a parent hand out chores, the allowance could increase if the child is doing different kind of chores, like tidying the room or helping out with dinner or something like that. We tried to make this a little bit more fun. So parents can ask for a picture proof, for instance, so the child actually had to take a picture of their room once they're done with tidying it. They can also set on like automatic approval. They can set like recurring chores, one-time chores. So there's like a system behind it. Another thing that the parents could add is an interest rate. So it's a parent-paid interest rate, and if the child is saving their money in the app, they're actually going to get more once the next allowance is being paid out. So it's a great way to incentivize, savings and so. And then, I mean, I can, like, some of my favorite features in the Gimme app. One is Piggy. Piggy is a financial advisor to the child. So it's a chatbot, which the child could talk to get inspired, get some recommendations, some tips and tricks and so forth. It's really popular. Another thing which I think is really cool is that the child can click on a transaction, and they can choose if it was a deep regret or a big success. And then the child actually starts thinking about, okay, where did I spend my money? Was this something that I actually, I'm satisfied with? And they're going to get like some data just showing these are your regrets, these are your successes. And that, start to think, then, their feedback loop starts working. Then I would say, like, we put a lot of content in Gimme. We put in like different kind of tests that children can do. They can also go through some lessons. These lessons are now actually starting to get distributed to the Swedish schools. So I think that's really cool. It's like Duolingo, but in personal finance. So we know, like, children who are using Gimme, they are increasing their financial literacy level. And that's like the end goal of it. So I think that's really strong. And we also know that this will have effect on the years to come for them and the years once they become adults, because a key thing with financial education is that a child's or a human being's relationship and their habits in how they're using their money is actually being set in the age 6 to 12. So if a child starts to use money when they're 13, it's a little bit too late. So you need to start early.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just love it. I mean, a lot of the kind of call them junior accounts or things offered by more traditional institutions, and perhaps your competition is more like a restricted version of the adult thing. It sounds like you're kind of doing it completely the other way around. So you're looking at what are the important things and kind of having this user-centric approach to it. But Paul, I mean, you're a father of two younger kids. How does it sound to you?
You know, I was actually sitting here listening to what you were saying and reflecting a lot to it. I mean, I've got two children that are exactly in the age range that you mentioned, and I have to admit, even though I work with the financial industry, I work with banks all the time. I feel that I'm fairly financially literate and understand money management, and I try to educate my children in the same way towards that. But what I'm finding is that my children are actually getting educated quite a lot through gamification, through games that they are playing, and no disrespect to the games. I mean, the world at the moment is encouraging people to spend rather than save, and games are encouraging to spend rather than save, right? You earn your money in the games, you can buy stuff that helps you to move forwards. And I'm wondering, you know, what is the view that you might have working in this field of gamification? I can understand that it's got some positive impacts on doing educational financial literacy, but is it really helping as much as it could do? Or maybe we're creating a conflict of interest almost by the drive of gamification.
Yeah, I would say the main problem is not that we have games and that children are playing games. The main problem here is that when it comes to gamification, it has to be lifted into the solutions we are building for education. Meaning that if a child wants to learn, we need to add the element of gamification to it. Because we know that with gamification, we can nudge a person into many different behaviors. If that is being done right, we can nudge children to learn more things. So gamification, maybe sometimes we think that people get, what's it called? They just keep on playing a game. It's hard for them to get out of that. And we also, yeah, thank you. They get addicted to games. And maybe that's the way we're using gamification today, a little bit too much in the industry. I also know that we're using it a lot, maybe when it comes to financial tools, to actually nudge towards spending. We always had gamification in terms of bonus systems. And if I would ask you, like, would you be paying for a card, for instance, like a financial service? Probably you would say no. You would actually expect you to get paid for spending money, like a bonus or something. And that's actually the way we built the credit systems, the way we built bonus systems, both for different kind of companies, but as well for new like fintech companies we can see today. So I would say in general, we are nudging people into the wrong habit. And it's very clear that we are nudging today into consumption instead of out of consumption. So when it comes to building financial tools and educational tools, if we were to add gamification, nudging towards saving, for instance, or nudging towards adding more knowledge, then we would see that we probably would get a lot of, good outcome in terms of how people actually get more power of how they're going to use money through their whole life. So I mean, with Gimme, we are trying to add as much as gamification as we can, and we're trying to nudge the child into good behaviors. So I would say if you don't add gamification to a financial platform and you are actually aiming to have young people using it, if you don't add gamification, you won't have any user, because they are online, they're using, as you say, they're on Fortnite, Roblox. If they come into a mobile bank app, if you would look at something that today's banks has built, there's no way they're going to be satisfied with that solution. They're not going to go in there. Maybe they're going to go and check the balance and then go out. But this is something, I mean, this is not even used when it comes to adult solutions. It's strange to me that we are not nudging adults as well into better savings behaviors and so forth.
It's interesting. I mean, after you said it, listening to you and reflecting on it, you're absolutely correct. Gamification has been there for a long time. I think it's just that the move to digital channels, the move to digital apps, and like you said before, cash as physical cash is disappearing, particularly in Sweden, and we see it here in Finland as well. It is, it has always been the gamification, but it also lends me into a different question, which you highlighted to there around education. Money is for most people an emotional subject. It is even for me, even though I work around money and with banks on a daily basis. I still find discussing my own financial situation or my own financial stability sometimes being an emotional one. I try to take that emotion away when I talk to my children, because I want them to, one, not see it as being a emotional or taboo subject to talk about money. I mean, we always, when my generation was taught, you never talk about your salary and those sort of things. And I think that's to a certain degree wrong when we're trying to teach emotional behavior around financial literacy. But it then makes me wonder, who should be in charge of educating the next generation around money? We educate the next generation around science and maths, etc., using the school system. Should money management be part of the curriculum at school? Should it be the banks that teach the children, or is it really down to the parents to teach financial literacy to their children? What do you think?
Yep. Firstly, I would say it's definitely something that schools should take way more seriously, I think. As of today, in Sweden, there's a total of 4 hours per year per student in personal finance. And then it's part of another subject, and it's not mandatory. So a teacher could actually choose not to educate that content. Just to understand, why does it look like this? If we go back 100, 200 years in time, that's when we actually made the structure of the curriculum which we are using today. It's like from the post-industrialism, like math on top, then you have like languages, and then you have different kind of science and so on. And I think it's clear that the curriculum needs to change because the financial landscape and the landscape in total is changing. The problem for us is that what we're teaching in schools is set on a governmental level. So the government needs to take decisions if they want to add something to the curriculum. And the truth is, in Sweden, back in 2019, the parliament actually had a motion for adding personal finance to the curriculum. And they granted it. So it was a yes. Mm-hmm. But then we end up with a second problem, and that is there is no material in personal finance in how we're teaching it. And there aren't teachers that are educated in personal finance. So, I mean, there's a long way to go to get it into the schools, even though we wanted to. So that's one part of it. Like, I think that we do want to add it to the curriculum, but it's hard for us as a society to do it in a short period of time. The second thing you were talking about is the banks. And that's maybe, what sparked my interest when I started Gimme. It was like, okay, why isn't a bank developing an app for the young people? Why is it looking exactly the same or just with locked features like as the adult app? And I've been working with that since, and the short answer is two things. One is that these customers don't generate revenue for the bank within the coming 2 to 3 years time. And banks are profit organizations. So they need to make revenue, and everyone working in the bank will be working to make revenue. The other part of it is that even if the banks would want to do this, if they see that there is a potential revenue in it, they don't really have the technical resources to do it because they have a legacy in terms of maintaining their systems. So what I think will happen is that there will be startups like Gimme or other organizations that will take on this problem to help children and their parents in this. And they would probably start to, collaborate with banks. We see open banking is working better and better for every day, and we can see this, like, I would say the mentality from the banks is also shifting from owning everything they're doing to actually having a third-party collaboration for stuff like this. But to answer you, like, where is the responsibility? I think, like, it is mostly on the government to make sure that we're educating the next generation, because this is a social problem, a societal problem. I wouldn't say, like, the banks are profit organizations. They will do this because it will benefit their brand, or they will benefit their existing customers in terms of the parents. And that's something that has to be, I would say that's something that has to be shifting over the coming 5-10 years. And I can see it will, because I'm working close to the banks. So I can see that it's happening.
Yeah,
I suppose there is a need for banks, and we've talked about this many times, Ville. There is a need for banks to start considering the shift from a product-centric banking model to a customer-centric banking model. I'm just wondering, from you sitting in a bank, what's your view on this from looking at, potentially growing a future customer base by engaging them at an early age?
I mean, it's a question that many banks kind of wrestle with a long time, or have been for a long time, but it's exactly like Philip said, developing specific products for this segment that is by definition, as it stands today, not generating any profits. So what you're doing is you're basically investing into the future, and it's very hard to predict how those customers will behave. Will they even remain customers? The typical banker would always argue that, well, they're just going to go whether they're going to do their house loan or mortgage in the future anyway. So we might as well win that battle instead of investing in this space. But this actually brings me to my point that I wanted to make here, is that this partnership approach for banks, which has been opening up quite significantly over the past couple of years, is answering these dilemmas exactly, because there are companies like Gimme who are focusing on doing really well on a certain customer segment, and then working together with the banks to kind of complement their offering and making sure that you are doing, again, that customer segment really well is a perfect match. And that's exactly the reason why banks, to my mind, are opening up on this open banking approach and partnership approach in general. But Philip, Gimme is already used by people all around the world, like we mentioned before. But what's next for you guys? World domination?
I think, like, when I think about our mission and what we're trying to do, and teach children about personal finance and so forth, I know that it's really like a long-term mission, because the effects we will have on children today, we will probably see the outputs in like 5 or 8 or 10 years time, and that's something that I actually, I get inspired by doing that kind of work. I think in general with startups, they are always trying to show the revenue on 6 or 12 months time, but I'm trying to always go back to our mission and what we're doing. So in terms of that, we are going to continue creating new functionalities and educational content where we know that we are educating the children in personal finance. We know that we have effect on their behavior. So we actually, like, the last week, I get a new white paper from 3 universities who has been looking into our data and researching on our children. And we actually got proof of 3 functionalities in the Gimme app, which have a positive impact on their behavior. So that is going to come out. I think that's great. We are going to add tests to see if the child's financial literacy, how it's actually evolves, and how we can connect that to different functionalities. One of the coolest things, which I love, is that we call it Super Skills Adventure, but it's an adventure where children can go through these lessons, like different kind of modules. They can pay for things, they can swap like different kind of products and services, and they learn a lot in these lessons. They are going to be distributed now in April through schools in Sweden. I think that's like a major step. And I know we've been talking to so many teachers. They are really, they're really looking like, how can we get the content? Even if we want to teach personal finance, we lack the content. So I think that's great. Then we have some secret stuff, which I can't reveal right now. But I would say, to give you a hint, what I see in our space is that there's a lot of companies and startups working to make sure that children get access to a card, like so that they can pay for themselves and so forth. I can just say that for me and for Gimme, it's not about that. It's not about actual access to the money, because we know in 3 or 5 years' time, children will be banked. They will have access to a card. So in terms of that, we are definitely building our model to make sure that we can be used with different kind of payment tools. It's not about the payment tool. It's about the functionalities that make children, want to engage and get smarter with their money. So I think like where Gimme is heading right now, we're just gonna not go for world domination right now, but things are really, going well for us right now. So we're just gonna, stick to our roadmap.
Excellent stuff. Look, we could keep on talking forever. This is such a fantastically interesting topic for sure. But time does fly when you're having fun, and it's time to round up today's episode. We usually have a segment in the end, but we're kind of already running a little bit over time, so we're going to save this topic for the next episode. So looking forward to hearing from us on these other topics in future episodes. But Philip, Paul and I would like to give you a chance to let the listeners know how can they find you, get in touch, or perhaps learn more about Gimme.
I would say, going to our website, gimmetheapp.com, or you can always, find me on LinkedIn on my name, and, drop me an email there, an email or so. You can always email me as well, philip.haglund@gimmetheapp.com. And yeah, or maybe if I start playing football again, you can see me on the pitch, I guess.
Looking forward to that, but fantastic. And thank you again for coming on the show and sharing some great experiences and insights with us here today. It was truly a privilege. But most importantly, thank you, our dear listeners, for your time hanging out with us. And as usual, we'd love to hear from you. So please send your feedback, comments, jokes, guest requests, or memes to us over email at hello@fintechdaydreaming.com, or ping us on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, or the anchor.fm page, and do get in touch. Paul and I will be back in 2 weeks' time with another new fantastic guest, so I will see you all again then. This has been Fintech Daydreaming.